Yo guys, in this video we are talking white balance. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Guillaume. I'm a filmmaker based on the Gold Coast, and today we are talking white balance. White balance is a very interesting topic. We are going to focus mostly on the editing part. So let's say you filmed and your white balance wasn't perfect. I'm going to show you a few tips through Final Cut and what I do usually to correct that white balance and to have a better look. This goes without saying that if you nail your white balance in the filming, you're going to get a better result in the end. There is only so much you can do, especially with any DSLR or mirrorless you're using nowadays. If you're not filming RAW with a red camera, for example, where you can change afterwards the white balance. If you film in Cine 4 or Stock 2 on a Sony, for example, and your white balance was too cool or too warm, you won't be able to change IPs. Like, you'll be kind of limited in what you can do. So you're better off being like pretty accurate when you set up your white balance depending on the condition where you're shooting. So there are a few tools you can use when you're on set and on location and you're about to shoot. One of the first things I do when I arrive on a set or on a shoot location is to check your white balance. One of the best ways to do that is to use your camera, and within the camera I'll show you here. You can do a custom white balance with your camera. So let's say you've got a white wall, you're going to point the camera at the white wall and press set on the camera, and it's going to set the white balance to that scene and taking into account the environment and the lighting conditions. Let's say you are now outside in the forest or by the sea and you don't have any white reference. Usually during daylight you know that it's around 5500, but if you are closer to the sunset or to the sunrise, the colors are going to be a lot warmer. So I'm using an app called ISP Evo, and basically I don't know if you can see much here. So basically here it's giving me the color temperature of that scene. So it's very interesting. It's giving me like 4800 right now Kelvin, which means you would set your camera at 4856 ideally to have the best white balance for this scene. So it's very interesting because I'm filming actually with my Sony A7R III and my white balance is set as 5500. So I'm actually a bit warmer. You don't always have to have the pure white look, and actually it depends of the scene, of the environment. If you're at the sunset, you don't want the sand to look perfectly white. For example, if you're on the beach, you will want it to look a bit more yellow. So you will increase your color temperature in camera to have that look. The same goes the other way. If you adjust your white balance a bit cooler, so let's say anything below 5000 down to 3000, it's going to give you a more cool, a more cold actually look. It also depends of the creative direction you are taking for that video that you are shooting. Obviously there are no right or wrong, but whether you are filming with a DSLR, a mirrorless, a drone, any camera, never shoot in manual white balance because that's going to ruin your footage. The reason why is the camera can do a great job at choosing the white balance for your scene. However, if you change condition, if you are filming towards the sun and suddenly filming towards something that's bluer, the white balance is going to change during your shot, and that's going to kind of make your shot useless because that's going to create some color shifts. Another way to set your white balance is actually to get one of those color checker. So this one is the color checker Passport, and basically if you turn, mine is a bit right here, you've got a gray card. Basically you set your white balance on this, so you use your camera and can set your white balance. The other option you have is actually to have, let's say you're filming an interview, is you're going to use this card, this color checker, and have it placed next to your subject, and you are going to get a freeze frame, and in post you'll be able to correct your white balance based on that screen grab pretty much. This color checker as well, like here I've got heaps of tools that you can use with some software. So I think Color Finale uses that and asks the software to match all the colors. Without further ado, now let's jump directly into Final Cut, and we are going to take an example of, let's say you filmed something and the white balance was not right. So I'm going to take a real estate shot, for example, I have here, and let's get started. So now we are in Final Cut Pro. I'm using the very latest version 10.4.9 that just got released late August 2020. The tools I'm going to use are available in all the previous versions, most of them, unless you've got a very old version of Final Cut. So I've got a few examples here. It's from a previous shoot. I'm scrolling through the footage for you guys, and as you can see, there are some issues. The colors don't feel right. There is absolutely no color grading. It's straight out of the camera. So there's definitely something wrong, but we are going to fix that just by dealing with the white balance. Let's assume I messed up during the filming and I didn't do what I just told you to do, which was to set the white balance in camera before. So let's say you haven't done any of this, you just shot right away. Now let's take this one, and the first thing I'm going to do here is in the tools, I like to pop that a bit more. Here we are going to open the RGB palette. So you can see here I'm in waveform, RGB palette. Final Cut gives you a tool as well, a reference bar here that we are going to use later as well. We can do a quick analysis. The RGB palette here, everything that's at the top are the highlights, and everything at the bottom are the shadows in your picture. What we can see right off the bat, if you look at the highlights, it looks like there is a lot more blue than red. I'm going to go straight ahead and say this is what's affecting the image right now, and gives that very cool look, which we don't want, because this was shot in bright daylight, probably around 10 or 11 in the morning, and this should be a lot warmer. Now that we are here, we have different ways of dealing with that. One way is to use the crop tool, because we want to make sure the white on this house, so it's pretty easy because this house is already white mostly, so we want to make sure the white is actually white and not bluish like it is. And to make sure we are targeting the right colors on our palette here, we can use different tools, and one of them is the crop tool. So by cropping on something that's pure white, we'll be able to isolate the color. One thing to note is that you want something that is white, but try not to go, let's say here on this wall, the sun was very harsh in the morning, and this wall is nearly overexposed. I've nearly clipped my highlight here, so let's try not to choose this part, but maybe more the garage door, or even trying to find a neutral place. Let's say we are going to use that part here with no shadows, nothing. So basically I'm going to use the crop tool here on the right side, try to isolate my fence. So here it gives us a much better visual of what's going on, and this wall here is supposed to be pure white, and it's not right now. I'm going to place my marker here kind of on the average, and so in the middle between the blue and the red, just to give me an idea when I'm going to correct the colors and see what's happening. So basically, since we are above 70 RRA here, I'm probably going to only try to change the highlights of the picture. They are the ones that are actually looking too blue right now. One good way to do that is to use the color panel from Final Cut directly. And I know a lot of people don't like this tool. I do like it because I think it's actually really easy and it does the job very well and gives a very simple visual representation of what you're going to do when changing the picture. If you don't have this one showing up as a standard, just make sure you click on the small arrow here and click on color board. That dot here is the master, so if I change it, I'm changing the master obviously. You can double click to reset. The shadows are this one, midtones and highlights. And we want to change the highlights right now. As we can see in the picture, we have too much blue in the highlights. So if I drag down the highlights, you can see I'm going to go extreme, and see I can adjust directly that blue column. So I'm just going to try to match it, and actually I'm very lucky because it looks already pretty good. If the color we were targeting in terms of brightness, if the color of the wall was a bit less bright, so let's say you have more shade or you are indoor, you might want to target more the midtones to adjust the color temperature of your picture. And here I'm actually quite happy by what I'm seeing here, and you see the magic of it is that if you go back and now you can move back down all those sliders in the crop tool, or you can untick the box, and this is our new picture. So that's the after and that's the before. You can't see much maybe, but we definitely change the color temperature here of the white. So we have a much more natural color coming on the house, whereas here was way too blue. Now on that picture, you might want to change a few more settings. So I like to create another color board for that and make sure like my trees here are a bit darker, so we can go into the exposure and kind of increase the contrast by changing those tools here, like kind of playing. I think here we are looking pretty good. So if I go back here now, I'm just going to untick and disable the color board number 1, which is our white balance, to show you what was before and after. So it's a very simple change, and the crop tool helped us isolate here that wall to make sure we were targeting the right colors and having the clear visual here on the RGB parade. One good thing is we didn't mess up too much that shot when filming it, so there was not much to be done. But now let's go on to the next one, and here this is the opposite. That shot was shot at night. We can use again the crop tool, but I'm going to show you another method to do that. Not my favorite one, but it's an option you have, and it depends what tools you like using. But you can use a mask, and let's say we want this ceiling here to be pure white, so we are going to select it. It's a bit faster than moving the sliders, for example, and here we have isolated our color, our ceiling directly. And the same way we are going to go into the colors. It's mostly the highlights and nearly the midtones actually that are affected, and we are clearly missing some blues. So I didn't explain that on the first one, but basically if I move up the slider, I'm going to add that color into the picture. If I move down the slider, I'm going to remove that color from the picture. So here we are missing some blue, so obviously I want to add some blue in the picture. Everything that's going to be seen in the middle will be mostly with the midtones. If you were going to change the color temperature of the shadows, you would want to use the shadow cursor. I'm pretty sure right now it looks more it's in the midtones, and indeed it was a bit darker. It was after sunset, so the whole scene is a bit darker, so it would make sense actually to change directly the midtones. So let's add some blue and see what's happening here. I'm just going to draw a line and see what I'm doing. So I'm adding quite a lot of blue here, and see if I move left to right, I'm actually going to change the other colors that are green and red as well. Play around and try to find a place where all three colors are at the same level at the same time. So I had to drag it up quite a bit, but I as well moved it to the left. One way to see better your RGB palette is to drag this down. And let's say we are good now. You go back into the inspector and disable the draw mask, and this is our new picture. So here it gives us a much cooler, much bluer look, but that wouldn't make sense because we are in the evening and the blue of the pool is actually reverbing on the walls. That ceiling here now is set as pure white. Now it's all about your creative intention. Do you want this shot to be a bit more cooler because it's around a pool, or do you want it to be warmer because you want to add some sunset light? And you can do that by going back into the color board and changing the intensity of the slider. So let's say here you can play directly around and having a look at the picture. Next is a drone shot. On this one I'm going to use another tool, which is actually sometimes a bit easier to move, because let's say you're going to edit a full video and you want to color correct the whole video. By using that tool you'll be able to use that tool throughout the whole video. So for this you need to go into the inspector on the left, go into the generators, and what I like to do is use the shape tool. We don't need any outline on this one, and we don't need any drop shadow. So I'm going to drop the opacity, take down the size. So we're going to try to mask, let's say here the tiles, we want them to be pure white. So I'm going to change the size of my shape and position it where I want. And now to just select that color, we are going to use the blend mode and directly go to stencil alpha. And now our shape is actually revealing only that part of the tiles. And again, on that RGB parade, we can see right away that there is something wrong, that the tiles are way too blue. So here we are now. Make sure you click on that clip, and now we are going to change into the color board directly the highlights and bring down the blues. So let's see what we can do here. moving left and right to try to find my middle. And here they're all aligned. Let's press V or right click and click on disable. And now that's our shot. So let's click back on the clip. And that was the before and the after. So we've got a much more natural color. Obviously, there are some issues still with that picture where it's still very dark. So let's create another color board. Let's go into the exposure, and I want my highlights to be a bit brighter. So I'm just going to adjust my highlights a bit here on the tool, make sure we are not clipping anything, and my shadows are a bit too high. So going to adjust them here and play around. I'll do another tutorial for this one to look a bit better. Obviously, we have this broom kind of thing to clean that tool to clean the pool here, so it's not the best shot, and we could have cleaned the grass to make that real estate shot a bit better. I'm actually going to do a real estate tutorial video how to shoot luxury real estate very soon. I'm just waiting to get the right property to film to show you guys how I do and how you can do it in a very quick and efficient way and still have an amazing video at the end. I'll just show you very quickly on that shot here, but basically what's missing is the blue of the pool is not really popping. It was a bit dark in the afternoon. You would want to change the colors. I'm going to add a correction here called hue saturation curve. We are going to select the U versus U tool and directly move up and down, kind of choosing our colors. So I'm pressing shift to lock my point on a straight line here, because if you don't press shift, it's going to move everywhere. If you press shift, it stays on the axis that you are moving. Very, very little change. I'm going to increase the saturation and a bit more luma to make it brighter. Just changing the color of the pool, and now our shot is a bit nicer. The greens as well are not that good. We can use the same tool and stay here. I'm going to adjust the greens, so make sure a bit more yellow eventually. We are going to saturate them a bit more as well, and let's see what the luma does. That one just destroys the quality and the details. See, if I'm pushing too far, we are losing a lot of detail. Obviously, something I forgot to mention, the higher the bitrate of your camera. So if you're shooting 8-bit, 10-bit or 16-bit, you'll be able to change much more in post. There is only so much you can do. If you messed up during the filming, if your white balance was 3000, it should have been 7000 kelvins, there is very little chance you'll be able to save the footage. There is only so much you can do before destroying the file and the colors, because you don't have enough data. So that's where like a 8-bit camera is going to perform less well than a 16-bit. I'm going to jump onto the next clip and just show you the before and after for this one. So that was before, way too blue, and now we made it look much nicer. Speaking of 16-bit or even RAW formats, this shot was filmed on Red Gemini and was filmed in RAW. So basically on Final Cut, if you go here and click on the small eye and go all the way at the bottom, here if you click on modify Red RAW settings, you have access at all the RAW controls of the camera. You could use any of the masks that we used before. For this one, we are not going to use any mask. I'm just going to go straight into it, and you can see I've actually pumped up the Kelvin on the RGB palette here. Like you'll see directly the changes as I cool down the shot. So we don't want to go too far. Roughly, we want the highlights here, that peak, which is here, to be white. So I'm just going to change my white balance. It was an indoor shot. We don't want to go too crazy. My ISO is a bit high maybe. We can add a bit of contrast. Those settings are metadata settings only, which means I can push as much as I want the color temperature either way without destroying my file and my video. I'm going to show you here. I'm going to take it down all the way to 1800 and all the way up to 9400. You can see there is no loss whatsoever in colors or into the file. We can use that tool that we used before. So here for this one, we want to choose something that's pretty neutral. So let's show our circle and put it right in the middle of the bed, just above the bed. Here, I'm happy with that. Go directly into the RAW settings of the camera, and we are going to adjust the white balance. Here shouldn't be too bad. The good thing is you can as well change the tint, so it's, if you pull towards the negative, it's going to be more red, more pink. and if you push towards the positive, you're adding more green. And I'm going to hide my shape. Here you go. And this one, maybe what I would do is pump up a bit the saturation, especially towards the highlights, to have those lights popping up a bit more. It's a bit dark actually at the bottom, so we could adjust the contrast. Obviously I'm clipping those lights, it's not a big deal, those are light bulbs, and kind of adjust our colors. See how I do, I always like to push the colors to see what I'm changing. This is just before and after with a little bit of contrast in a very clean image. And finally, there is a tool in Final Cut that does the job for you, and I'm going to show you that right now. Let's go back on our first clip, and I'm going to turn off all the adjustments we've made so far. And I'm going to tell you at the end why I don't always choose this option. Basically, if you click on your clip and press here on that small wand, there is a tool called balance color, and there is as well a shortcut, and if you click on that, it's going to do your white balance for you. You can see it gives pretty much the same look that originally got, but it does it automatically. You can see here there are two methods. Either automatic, where Final Cut is going to choose for you what's the white reference, what's the white balance, what's the color temperature, and will apply adjustments for you. And otherwise you can click on white balance and giving you a small drop down tool, and you can choose. So if we choose here the same way we did, giving you a white balance sample. Basically, so depending on where you click, you can adjust your white balance. So it's really cool when you need to do very quick adjustments. So here I click on some parts that are much bluer. If I click on a part that's more yellow, like here, it's going to give more blue look. But yeah, like as it's written here, to set white balance, click or drag over an area that should be pure white. The reason why I'm not using that tool and I didn't show you at first is that it's not only adjusting the white balance, and I feel like it's adjusting as well other settings that we don't have control on. So obviously, yes, it's going to work very well for shots that are already pretty well balanced, and it's going to give you that white balance, especially when you don't know what's your white point anymore and like you have no white reference in your shot. I found myself using that tool actually when there was absolutely no white in the picture, and I will use the tool, and because I wouldn't be happy with the colors of my video, and it would find somehow like the white balance. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But let's try it on different shots like this one. So I'm just going to remove all the effects and use the shortcut. Very subtle, but it did some kind of white balancing. Again, I can choose my own white point by clicking on different parts of the picture. The ceiling was a pretty good point, I would say, or even here, I would be quite happy with that. So let's go on to the next one and disable that one. So let's take that one where the white balance, as you can remember, I changed the white balance of this into the raw setting. I was pretty happy with my result, but let's apply a white balance on top of this. And here, you can see it's not super obvious, but if you check the RGB parade on the left side and look at the lower hand of the spectrum, when I disable the white balance, it's actually changing my contrast. And this is what I mentioned before, and this is what I don't like, is when I use the tool, it's going to change my contrast, my exposure, and some parameters that I don't want to change through my white balance, because I just want my white to be adjusted and I want to have control over that. So this is a good tool to use sometimes when you don't know what would be the white balance and you know there is something wrong in the video but you don't know what it is. Use that tool. Sometimes it gives great result. You could use the tool all the time, but if it doesn't give you a good result, now you know how to use other tools like the masking, the draw, the crop, and using a form generated to kind of find your own white balance and correct it yourself, because the tool is only an automatic tool and you've better sometimes do it by yourself. And that's it, guys. If you learned something from that video, I would really be thankful if you could click on that subscribe button and on the like thumb up as well. That would really help the algorithm and all that kind of thing. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about the video or if you want to see something in particular in one of the next video, and I'll see you next time. Tschüss!